Hi, I'm Megan Widner, and I'm analyzing the Ultimate Office Products case. So some background on the case is that the Ultimate Office Products is an old established manufacturing company. New companies are coming in and they're causing the office product industry to become turbulent and changing. Richard Kelly, he's the UOP Director of Information Systems, which was a newly created position to help take care of these problems. So the CEO's goals for Kelly is to speed up the order processing and to improve customer service. So Kelly's first attempt to initiate this change, his actions were he ordered a new processing system. He experienced internal problems with the change in implementation, which we'll talk more on, and then he had to create a new approach and a plan. So the first key issue that we have is that the industry was changing. Discount merchandisers and office product superstores were altering the distribution channels that were once dominated by wholesalers and small retail stores. So the changes that were made was that there was needed an upgrade of customer service expectations to be more technologies favored. The new companies, the superstores and discount merchandisers, were willing to cut prices, and they were using technology such as electronic orders and billing, which was making it more convenient for the customers. And so because of this, UOP was losing their market shares and profits were declining. The second key issue is that once they got the software in, there were software delays. It was intended to automate the customers to be able to make electronic orders, but it wasn't set up. And they had these software packages and new computer workstations, but they were still waiting to be used. They weren't put together. The third key issue is that there was managerial conflicts. The sales and the production, accounting, shipping, and customer service managers, they could not agree on the new system requirements. And then Kelly had no direct authority over the managers, so he couldn't force them to implement any changes. And then the meetings that they had, they ended up in arguments and accusations about who was in charge of the company's problems. And then disagreements on the company delays also had the managers had disagreements, but they also were questioning what the need for this new expensive system was. So Kelly had to come up with a new plan. The CEO said, this is not working. We need to come up with a new plan. And so what he did then was he decided to dive deeper into the system of how UOP operates. And so he began to gather new information about the delays in processing and filling orders. And then he mapped the workflow from the time orders were received until being shipped. In doing this, he was able to identify, what are the bottlenecks and where are these cross-functional problems? So he took this analysis and he took it to the CEO and got approval to be able to make dramatic improvements and also to re-engineer the processes that were needed. In doing so, he gained the CEO's approval, and then he was able to take that to the department managers, and there he was able to use their help to create cross-multiple task force and to hire an outside consultant to advise the task force work. So then we have the task force. The structure and the responsibilities of theirs was each task force examined a different aspect of the problem. They had to analyze that specific process. And then they had to meet with customers and learn, what did the customers want? What is it that they like and what they prefer to use? And then they also were tasked to visit other companies and learn about how they process their orders more efficiently. And then they were also tasked to find solutions to these problems from the information that they learned from the first task that they had. Once they found new ways to improve the efficiency in customer service, then they had to make recommendations to the steering committee, which was composed of Richard Kelly and the department managers. And the CEO of the company, she attended these meetings, but she was only there to know what was going on and also to support the committee recommendations. And then the outcome of the second attempt to create this positive change was that by having the multiple task force, even though only one task force would have worked, but by having multiple ones, it involved more people in the process, in the change process, so they would understand and support it. And in doing so, more people worked together, and then they realized how serious the problems were. And then within a year, the company eliminated many steps in processing the orders, and the average number of days was reduced by nearly half. And the company began to see an increase in orders being processed electronically. And then also, once people discovered that they could be a part of the positive change, they volunteered to serve on teams that continued to look for ways to improve quality and customer service. So the questions in this case were, why did Richard fail at his first attempts to implement change? And then also to identify the subsequent actions by Richard that were more effective for implementing change in the organization. And then third, we were to evaluate the change leadership provided by the CEO. And question 1, why did his first attempt fail? Well, in the book, if we look at using these 5 skills for leading positive change, in order to create this change, you have to establish a positive climate, create readiness, you have to articulate your vision, and generate commitment, foster sustainability. Which Kelly did not provide for favorable climate of change, and many of the meetings that had the management ended in heated arguments, and many managements could not even agree on the new system requirements. Some questioned the need for the system. So it sounds like he didn't have a plan for how he was going to implement these changes, and it was just left for the management to kind of figure out their part of how this change was implemented. And then Kelly did not create readiness and signify a positive change or provide any benchmarks for best practices of the improvement standards. So they didn't know what the plan was and what was expected of them and how it was going to help affect positive change for the company to function together overall. And then Kelly did not articulate a vision, as management did not understand the overall plan. And he didn't showcase what the value in doing this was for the company and for the managements for their job. He didn't identify any future identities, optimization, and he didn't share a glimpse of the opportunities for implementing this change with others. Kelly also failed to generate a commitment to the vision. The case never stated a framework in the first initial change attempted by group meetings and failed to communicate a vision of steps to follow in implementing these changes. So therefore, no one was committed to the vision. No one knew what was going on. And then because none of these previous steps were followed or done successfully, he couldn't implement a sustainable change. Question 2, we are asked to identify the subsequent actions by Richard that were more effective for implementing change in the organization. So what he did differently the second time was that he decided to do a more in-depth analysis of the situation. So he gathered new information about the delays in processing and filling orders. And then after he did that, he mapped the workflow from the orders from when they're received and when they're shipped, and to understand what's the total overall process of how the system worked. And by grasping that understanding, he was able to identify the bottlenecks and then also find the cross-functional problems to overview areas that needed the most attention. And then this is just reiterating what was stated earlier. After he found all this analysis, he took it to the CEO and was able to get approval to make dramatic improvements and to re-engineer the process. So he communicated his plan to get the support that he needed to implement and identify the problems. And then he included the department managers to create these multiple cross-functional task force, and he hired an outside consultant to advise the task force. So he created these task force and he delegated the work to them, and then he let them do their work and had the outside consultant to help advise them. And then by creating the multiple task force, more people were aware of the problems. And then the management was involved because they assigned the employees that they trusted that were knowledgeable in their department, that they would be able to help take care of the issues on their behalf. And then he also delegated and empowered the task force to become involved and create positive solutions that everyone is aware of and that are communicated in meetings. So then the third question, we were asked to evaluate the change leadership provided by the CEO. The CEO met Kelly, and this was a newly created position to upgrade the technology system. And then she clearly defined his responsibilities and objectives from the beginning. And then she also empowered Kelly by using the core dimensions of self-determination by giving him autonomy over his work to solve these complex problems, to speed up order processing and improve customer service. So after his original plan failed, the CEO empowered Richard through the core empowerment dimension, self-efficacy by verbal persuasion. And so she was stating that she expected him to solve this and that she knew that he could solve it. And then the studies show that the Pygmalion effect of verbally convincing people can boost self-efficacy. So in order to prevent groupthink, an outside consultant was used to advise the task force. Kelly, under the recommendations from the department managers, he set up the task force, and then therefore the case states that when one department managers opposed a change during these meetings, everyone would look at the CEO expecting the CEO to make a statement, and the CEO made it very clear that she was there to support the task force recommendations. So Irv Janis, he defined groupthink as a mode of thinking that people engaged in when they're deeply involved and cohesive in group, when the members are striving for unanimity, override their motivation to appraise alternative courses of action realistically. So to avoid this, they use open discussion. In this case, they used open discussion and outside experts, subgroups through their task force, and then they had the devil's advocate, which was the managers that were opposing some of the task force recommendations. So one context for groupthink is when the leader gives their opinion on a matter early on and others are afraid to go against the leader. And in this case, the CEO clarifies that she is not there to use her input, but she trusts the task force. And so she's not looking to be there for everyone to just strive to get an answer, but she was there to use the alternative actions that were recommended by the task force and not just the managers. Therefore, the CEO helps Richard Kelly identify the complex situations. She didn't overwhelm Kelly with a bunch of information, but she just made her expectations clear and concise initially when the first plan went wrong, and then from the beginning when his first task that was given to him, and then when his first plan went wrong, and then also during the change meetings that was held. She supported Kelly's second plan, but then she also stayed out of his way so that way he could create that change. And then she also attended all the task force meetings, but she kept quiet to prevent groupthink on her behalf, and then supported the task force. And lastly, she helped unlock human potential by delegating what needed to be done and empowered her employees to accomplish the task independently without intervening, which helped stabilize the organization internally. So in conclusion, in order to survive this changing industry environment and to adapt to the modern technology usage, Richard Kelly was given the task of fixing the bottlenecks of Ultimate Office products by creating a positive change in the main two areas of order processing and customer service. After a failed change implementation attempt, Kelly came up with a new plan using better change management through collaboration with other management departments and creating a task force to get more people involved. They became aware of the problems, and by hiring outside consultant help to assist the positive change needed, the CEO empowered Kelly to complete his task using the core dimensions of self-determination and self-efficacy. And then here's the references that were used.